With 3 sets, drafting gets a bit more difficult. You're not really sure what cards to expect. Lots of times if there's 2 packs of Theros, you know it's a good chance you're going to get like a Wingsteed Rider or a Hopeful Eidolon or whatever card you're specifically looking for if you're that color. With 3 different packs, it's kind of more of a crapshoot, and it's really tough to kind of think of what you are hoping to open and actually open.
I'd just say that Journey into Nyx makes the format more balanced. Born of the Gods was a pretty aggressively slanted pack, so you wound up with a format where it's all about curving out and just trying to stomp your opponent as fast as possible. But Journey into Nyx has some cards for every color, some cards for control, some cards for aggro. You can really build whatever you like in this format.
I think the focus now is on drafting what is more understood as traditional good limited decks with a curve and removal, rather than trying to build a heroic theme deck or a graveyard theme deck or whatever the case may be. And I think that it rewards people who have really strong and confident card evaluations and those kind of traditional old school limited skills.
I like the draft format. It's pretty cool. There are a lot of cards that you have to play around, a lot of instants and all that. There are a lot of interesting combat scenarios where you have to play around. I can play around Griptide, but not Voyage's End or Coordinated Assault. There's just so many cards. You have to keep on thinking about it, every single one each time you're going into that. So it's not bad.
The best strategy for this format is probably some strategy where you have a lot of removal, just because there's lots of decks that will try to be a heroic deck. There's lots of decks that will be able to just have like a huge creature. So when it's all like 1 pack, synergy is more important. But when it's 3 packs, I think you really want removal.
I'd say the best color is white. Best color combination is white-blue. However, that's the short answer. Black is also an extremely deep color, and I particularly like it because you can pretty much draft any color combination or any strategy if you're drafting black. And then blue is also a little bit more shallow, but it's probably the best support color because those cards like Griptide, Sudden Storm, Sea God's Revenge, the tempo plays are so good in virtually any deck.
Well, I like pairing blue with any other color, but other than that, yeah, blue X. A lot of people from my group like blue-green, but you know, as long as I'm drafting blue, I'm fine.
Going into the tournament, I would have said black-green. Black-green is the one archetype that I really didn't feel comfortable drafting. And I actually just drafted a black-green deck in my last pod, and it worked out pretty well. I went 2-1, which is a good result. Black-green decks are the ones that, in my opinion, need the most things to go right for them to work out. The colors just don't complement each other very well, and if you end up without any graveyard synergies, which is very easy to happen, then your deck is frequently pretty clunky. So it's not my favorite thing to draft. They can still work out, obviously, but you really need the right cards to be seated in the packs, and by doing that, you're kind of relying on the luck of the draw more than I would prefer.
Besides for obviously getting bombs, you definitely want to have a good early curve. I actually have 3 of the 1/3 Black Servants that drain your opponent for 1 when it gets inspired. So a card like that is really important to have early defense, because sometimes people will just draft, like an aggressive deck, and with that card you really shore up a good chance of winning that game or that match. But essentially just removal, bounce, or early creatures.
I'd say a good mana curve. You really don't want to end up with a deck where your first play is on turn 3. Like having a healthy number of 2 drops, even if they're just the Grizzly Bears that trade early on, is very helpful, because as I was saying earlier, you don't want to start a game on the back foot.
Most of the limited formats that they've been putting out lately reward aggressive strategies. It's harder to draft control, mid-range, grindy type decks, much harder than it used to be. Since this one really rewards having sharp counter valuations and knowing the relative value of certain cards to certain decks, and being able to kind of put together a whole coherent package, not just a pile of cards. I think that's a welcome departure maybe from previous set blocks where really you needed to put together a constructed deck where you really didn't have a chance to compete.